everyone, I'm the 5-minute reviewer, and today I'm going to cover the top 5 scariest experience as a Nintendo fan. Now, gaming is supposed to be fun, supposed to be enjoyable. But for this Halloween, I want to cover and showcase certain experiences rather than the games itself, although I'll mention some games that actually scare me as a Nintendo player and a Nintendo fan for a very long time. So without further ado, let's begin. It's going to be a fun thing, so just don't take the list seriously. If you have an alternate list, please let me know in the comments. So let's begin. So the first one on the list, number 5 on the list I want to highlight is when your motion controls fail. Now, if you are old enough to remember, the Nintendo Wii was introduced around the year 2006, with the highlight being motion controls. Initially, these were great for games to use motion controls as a gimmick rather than a main factor in its playing style, although some games like Wii Sports bucked the trend and motion controls were fun. But for games that needed precise motion controls like Red Steel, it was a big concern. Some flagship Nintendo games like Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn chose to forego the wonky motion controls anyway. However, in E3 2010, they were introducing The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, which will exclusively rely on motion controls. I bought the game on launch, and even though I had Wii Motion Plus, the additional controller, or rather attachment to the controller, which made the controls more precise, the motion controls sometimes would fail and I would be extremely frustrated. And this is a time where there was not an easy way to patch console games. Even the legendary Miyamoto himself had trouble using controls on stage during the E3 press conference of the demonstration of Skyward Sword. So I should have known from the start it would be a scary experience trying to use motion controls in such a precise game. Alright, let's move on with our list. The next on the list I want to highlight is the price of being a fan. It is not cheap to be a Nintendo fan. For instance, I myself haven't gotten a Switch 2 as it costs about $750 in terms of Singapore dollars. On top of that, in order to use the online service, you need to buy a Nintendo Switch Online account. Okay. And you want to play the retro consoles, some of the retro consoles like the GameCube versions and the Nintendo 64 version, you need to pay an additional price on top of it. So it is not cheap being a Nintendo fan, and that is one of the real scary experience playing Nintendo games. And don't get me started on the Switch eShop, where the discounts are not as frequent as those on Steam. So you still pay a premium on the games that you want to buy, or you have to wait a long time before you get to play it. Scary part about being a Nintendo fan is that sometimes you receive inferior ports, even though it's within the same brand. So for example, Baten Kaitos, which came out for the Nintendo GameCube, could run at 60 FPS and had English voiceovers. But the Switch version, you only can run it at 30 FPS with no English voiceovers. So your options get lesser, even though the game has been more modernized. That's not counting certain games where they have frame rate issues because the game size is so big and demands a lot from the Switch that it can handle. So for example, in this game, Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous, there were a lot of frame rate issues, there were a lot of loading issues. Eventually it got patched in, but there's no guarantee that every developer would have time to do that for the Switch version. So that's one of the fear of buying an inferior port for the Nintendo Switch. Next on this list is being a Star Fox fan. Star Fox fans have been asking for a remake or sequel to one of the older Star Fox games, and Star Fox haven't seen an appearance other than a cameo in the game, Ubisoft game, I think Starlink Battle for Atlas, all the way back in 2018. The last dedicated Star Fox game was actually for the Wii U called Star Fox Zero, all the way back in 2016, so about 9 years ago. Even F-Zero recently made an appearance for the game F-Zero 99, and also the games like Fire Emblem, which used to be a B-level title, keep having sequels. So Star Fox fans unfortunately don't have anything remotely similar to that. There are many games I wish had a follow-up like The Last Story and Star Wars Rogue Squadron, but Star Fox fans remain disappointed. The most scary experience, number 1, is Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem. These horror games often breaks the fourth wall by screwing with your mind. Player, suddenly you see a blue screen of death when you play halfway, even though it's part of the game effect. and also suddenly your TV fades away or suddenly turn itself mute and you think there's something wrong with the game or your television, but actually it's part of the game experience trying to scare you out of your wits. Eternal Darkness is one of the highly rated Nintendo GameCube game, and I hope it comes back for the Switch or the Switch 2. That's my top 5 scariest experience as a Nintendo fan. So with that said, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and do let me know about your own personal scary experience playing a Nintendo game. And before I forget, happy Valentine's Day and happy All Saints Day. Take care everyone.